Hey guys, Joe Soto here, and I want to take a few minutes just to share with you my top 5 favorite books on advertising. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, Joe has this background in social media. He's had his own social media agency for several years. So he's going to show me some really good social media advertising books. And that's not what I'm going to do today. Today I'm going to show you advertising books that had a major influence and impact on how I started to approach the advertising business. And the knowledge that you get from the books I'm going to share you help make you a better advertiser for your clients. In fact, it'll keep you several steps ahead from the other social media agencies or advertising people out there who claim to know what they're talking about in the world of advertising, but they really don't understand advertising and marketing. What they understand is maybe how to place a Facebook ad. Maybe they understand how to place an Instagram ad. Maybe they understand some of the basics of the technical aspects of advertising on social media, but they don't really understand people. They don't understand advertising as a medium, meaning they've never actually studied advertising. They've studied social media. They've studied how to place an ad. They've studied business manager in Facebook and things like that. But the real secret to, I think, the success that I've experienced in other people that I've met that have grown their agencies to exceed, $1 million a year in sales or more is that they've studied advertising. So what are my top 5 favorite books in this world? Well, first of all, I have introduced these before, but I'm going to say them again. I really am a big fan of Roy Williams, and he owns the Wizard Academy down in outside of, I think, Austin, Texas. And I've always wanted to go there and train at the Wizard Academy. I've got some good friends who have done it. I just haven't been able to match up with the schedule because he doesn't do a lot of events per year. But his books had an early impact on me many years ago. One is called The Wizard of Ads. And it looks like a kind of a medieval times book, but it's really cool. Turning Words into Magic and Dreamers into Millionaires is the name of the book. But it's really based on the philosophy of advertising as he sees it, and I encourage you to read that book. It's a great foundation, and it's a fun read, so it's interesting. And to me, that book it's still very modern, and it's written for modern advertising, and he does a lot with internet advertising and consulting in that realm as well. And then he wrote a second follow-up book, which is awesome, called Secret Formulas of the Wizard of Ads, okay? Where it's a little bit more about the psychology behind the advertising. And to me, I'm a psych major. I was a psych major in college. Some of you may or may not know that. My degree is in human relations psychology. And I really love the psychology behind human behavior and what makes people tick. That's why I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins and a lot of people out there that I've learned from. Well, those 2 books right there are going to give you the psychology of advertising, almost unlike any other book you're going to read. So highly recommended. Okay, next. This is the classic book on advertising. If you don't own it, you have to have this in your library just because it's like the classic book on advertising. So David Ogilvy wrote a book called Ogilvy on Advertising many years ago. And his book, his firm, Ogilvy, it's still one of the top advertising firms in the country today. Okay. And if you just do a little research and just type in Ogilvy into Google, you'll see just how prominent of a brand it's been in the advertising arena and advertising world. Well, this is the Bible on advertising. So if you read this book, it's full of pictures and examples, which is really great. So you can see here as I flip through it, lots of like before and afters and commentary on the copy, the layout strategy of ads. If you want to be able to strategically influence your work and with your team to do the best job possible for your clients, then you want to get this book because it does teach you kind of the in and outs of everything advertising. It's not that big of a book, but mine's dog-eared and really aged now. And I encourage you to study old school advertising like this because some of you think it's old school. And it may seem like it, but the thing is, it hasn't really changed. It's just the medium of how we're advertising has changed. Now we're advertising via content, and we're doing it via imagery on social media. We're doing it on Facebook and Instagram, and LinkedIn and other places online now. Whereas before it was just newspapers and magazines, and where you'll see a lot of examples there. But the concepts still apply. Just because the medium's changed doesn't mean the concepts of advertising have changed much. It's all the same. Human behavior, the way we perceive information, it's changed a little bit, but most of that stayed the same. Now, because the medium of social is more social interaction, some of that stuff won't apply, but most of it will, and it's a great read. And there's a follow-up to it. Very few people I've met have read this book. It's called Confessions of an Advertising Man by David Ogilvy. Okay, and Media Week says it's required reading for anyone in business. The reason why I like this book, first of all, he talks about how to manage an advertising agency, which if you have a social media agency, a lot of the same principles will apply. He has a chapter on how to get clients. It's very good. He also has a chapter on how to be a good client, so you can educate your client on how they can work with you and be a good client, how to build great campaigns, how to write potent copy, how to illustrate advertisements and posters, and how to make good television commercials, the principles in that chapter can be applied to how to make good YouTube videos. How to make good campaigns, how to rise to the top of the tree. Should advertising be abolished is his last chapter. It's really, really good insight into running an agency, not just the advertising world. But to me, it gives you a behind the scenes look of how a masterful advertising and agency owner, one of the best agency owners of all time, in fact, the grandfather of agency ownership, sees running an agency and the success principles behind it. When I got this book, it was a real gem, and I actually have 2 different editions of it and versions of it. That's how much I liked it. So that's my 4th. So we got 2 authors with 4 books because they're both really set the standard in the world of advertising. And then my other favorite book, this is one that most people just don't even know is out there, but it's a classic. And David Ogilvy even writes in the back of this book, it's called Reality and Advertising. I'm not sure if you can read it very good. Reality and Advertising by Rosser Reeves. And the top testimony on the back of the book is David Ogilvy saying that this is as important as an important book that he shall order 400 copies for every single officer and employee and every one of his clients. So not just his employees, but also his clients. So this is also a book that I give to my employees. And there's some really, really good, it's not a very thick book, but it's some really good insight and really gives you insight behind why I teach certain things that I teach in my local consulting academy course, because some people think that I just come up with this stuff or that some of it just came from my experience. Well, some of it came from my experience hinged on what I learned early on, literally 7-8 years ago, from this book and from the books I just shared with you. For example, he talks about the multi-million-dollar error, one of my favorite chapters in the book. And the error is, I'm going to give it to you here, is that your clients may think, and I have clients like this now, that think that the repetition of a lot of your ads, even though let's say it's a restaurant, you're sharing the same burger, okay, over and over, different various pictures of the burger. Maybe the burger is with somebody holding the burger, and the next one's, another picture of the burger, and you keep showing the burger, and the client sees it all the time, and you see it all the time. Your team makes this error too. They see it and they go, people are going to get bored of this ad. People are going to get bored of seeing the same food over and over. I mean, the menu can only be so big, so it's only so many posts we can make about food and drink and beverage. But what you got to remember is that your advertising is only hitting a certain percentage of people. If you're advertising on Facebook, you can focus on hitting people that do not already like the fan page. And what people forget is that you're not hitting the whole scope of the audience that's out there. That's why you'll see repetition of ads in magazines from even today, because the advertiser who understands what he's doing understands that repetition and consistency is key, because you may only be hitting 15% of the market throughout an entire year when you still got 60% more that still have yet to see your ad because you just haven't hit them at the right time yet. This is one of my favorite things because he talks about how lethal it is to change your story or your brand story, or how lethal it is to change your theme in your advertising or your angles or your imagery and excerpt too soon. He actually says changing the story has the same effect as stopping the money as far as penetration is concerned. So he's talking about market penetration. He says, thus, if you run a brilliant campaign every year, but change it every year, your competitor can pass with a campaign that is less than brilliant, provided he never changes his copy. He's reinforcing the consistency of ad copy, the consistency of the same message over and over and over and over. And that's why you see companies like Coca-Cola and Pepsi and other major brands sticking with the same brand message sometimes for several years before they change it. He says, unless a product becomes outmoded, a great campaign will not wear itself out, he says. So, when you find, that's why when I find out when we dial in the right audience set, we will keep advertising to that audience set, because the audience set might be a potential reach on Facebook of, say, 150,000, but your ad for $20 a day or whatever it might be for whatever business you're doing this for, or even 100 or 3,000, is only going to reach a percentage of that 150,000 people. So we got to keep running it and running it and running it and running it, hoping that it keeps expanding to hit that 150,000 over the course of maybe a year. So we'll keep that same audience set. And once we dial it in one that's responsive, now we know we can keep hammering them over and over. This works very well with the restaurant clients that we have, because we'll run a catering ads for them and keep running it to the catering set over and over to get catering clients. So there's my 5 favorite books. I'm going to put the list below as well. But that's my 5 favorite books on advertising. Now, some of you are going, well, Joe, I've also seen you introduce some copywriting books. That's going to be a separate video where I share my favorite copywriting books, which also branches and overlaps into advertising. But for just pure advertising principles, advertising psychology, and advertising concepts, you can't go wrong with these 5. Hope this was valuable.